Hi, and welcome to the Normal Cert. Way back in the dim and misty, some 20 plus years ago, I was on vacation in the west of Ireland. One of the days, myself and my brother were driving around, just sightseeing more or less, and we came across this place that had a sign saying Antiques, Furniture, Bric-a-Brac, so we pulled in to have a look. There was some old junky sheds in the place, and the stuff they were selling was, for the most part, crap. Amongst it, there was this Boxford lathe. It was a small lathe. It didn't have very many handles or dials on it, and I wasn't sure what handles or dials were for. I'd come across a few lathes before, but never really got close up to them and had a good idea of how they function. Well, I knew how a lathe functioned. I had to make parts from time to time and used a drill and just hung something from gravity and center punched what I thought was the center for a hole and drilled a hole and tapped it to make an axle or whatever. I figured I could do with a lathe if I could get my hands on one. This guy was looking for 650 Irish squids for this yoke. It was a Boxford TUD, T for trainer, UD for underdrive. The motor was down underneath the spindle. It came out of a school. It had very little wear on it, though I didn't know what to look at the time, but afterwards I noticed it had very little wear on it, but a lot of dints and knocks. The chuck that came with it was kind of bell-ended, so every time I put something in it, I did buy it, every time I put something in it, you'd have to wibble and wobble it to get it straight. The guy wanted 650 squids for it, as I said, but he wanted cash. He didn't want to give any receipt for it. This is typical of it. It happens all over the place. It's just par for the course in this country. There's nothing you can do about it. He's a local in an area. The local people are probably aware of what he's up to. It's not my place to argue with it, but I had to get him 650 squids. I was on holidays. He told me the name of he told me where the local branch of the bank I was with was and suggested I go there and withdraw money. But I knew that you couldn't just go to a bank that wasn't your branch and get that kind of money in those days or today. They'd bring you in, they'd spend ages with you, you'd have to give them all sorts of IDs and whatever and prove whatever, and at the end of the day you'd come out with an extra chip on your shoulder, just feeling that bureaucracy had pulled you down just another notch. But what actually happens is each branch is a franchise, and whatever money they can get in at the end of the day, they can keep a certain percentage of it, and there's no way that they're going to give money to people who belong to a different branch, even if it's the same bank, and even if that bank is entrusted to, deal with their customers throughout the country. It's just the way things operate. They'll spend a lot of time with you checking your bona fides, but the only bona fides they really want to know is that you're just a nobody off the street that has no affiliations and doesn't know anybody important, and you can just be told to feck off like another nobody, except for they don't tell you to feck off. They say that, they've been trying their best and whatever, and you seem to be who you are, but we can't take the risk. This is just the mechanics of greed as it operates. They're complicit in any deception that they involve themselves with, which kind of suits the organization because that's how they want them. Anyway, that's a completely different subject. I bought the machine and I brought it back home. It took me a few days of going to DrinkLink machines to get the money. You were allowed to have 200 squids a day from a machine. The Irish squid, which is now extinct, fortunately, was the same value as the Great British squid, which is still in existence. The Great British people, they had the opportunity of becoming a Euronation as well, but they thought that that'd be taking the piss, so they didn't do it. The chuck I ground a few years ago, I found that the runoff on it was 0.6 of a mil, which is very high. It was 3 mil off from center, 0.3 of a mil off from center, but I put a spindle on it and grounded it, and at the same time I took the whole machine apart and put it back together. This was years after buying it. I'd used it in the meantime, not a lot, but quite a bit. I knew its limitations and I just worked around it. Like, I knew if it was a suitable tool for the job I had to do at the time, it did the job. I eventually got another bigger lathe. So at this stage, I've found it handy to have it there, and there's certain jobs that I would do and I would just move to it rather than to the other lathe to do something on it. But it is a trainer lathe. It's got no power feeds, it's got no gears, it's got no nothing in it. It's just, you can wind it backwards and forwards and in and out, and then you've got the little compound which you can do an angle at, but you know, all your cutting is manual, which is not as clean and as neat as having a power feed. So I've decided to convert it to CNC. I was going to do this about a year ago, and I looked up on Amazon to see if I could get the right gear to convert it. I managed to order motors and ball screws and ball nuts and whatever I needed, about 650 €700 worth. And this was, I'd been looking for a while on Amazon, but most of the sites that you go to for the kind of stuff that I'd be looking for, it says there are no suppliers supplying this product to Ireland. So eventually it was whatever, I can't remember, it was about a year ago. I can't remember who they were, but they had only just come on Amazon as a new supplier, and they were in China, and I ordered stuff from them. But it never arrived because there was no tracking number on it, and any stuff being sent to Ireland that has no tracking number will not arrive at the destination, in my opinion. That's been my experience for years. You know, somebody's going to see that the package can't be traced where it's disappeared, and it will disappear, and there's always somebody else to blame, and they'll blame back the other person. That could be the final destination versus the postman, and they're both saying that the other is just a crook. This is with the stuff that I have to send internally around the country to companies. If I don't have a tracking number on it, I know somebody's going to phone up at some stage and say they never got it, and could you send another one free, gratis. They just do it in this country. It's just, I don't know. Anyway, so a year later I decided to start again, order new stuff on Amazon, and then I ordered some stuff from Banggood as well. It was Amazon refunded the money that I had paid for all the stuff that never arrived, and they suggested to use Banggood. When I was talking to the guy there, I said that, you know, a lot of the stuff that I want just isn't available for Ireland, and he said to try Banggood, that they're just as good as them. You know, if there's any problems, Banggood will look after them, that they're a reliable, decent company. So eventually I did, and that worked out for me as well, so far. So when I started taking this lathe apart to convert it, I wasn't going to video it, I was just going to convert it to CNC. But my milling machine broke and I had to fix it, and I kind of figured that I owed it to, I'd learned so much from YouTube that I owed it to, you know, if there was something that wasn't there, I saw there wasn't a fix for what I was fixing. So I decided to video it. It was a pretty crappy video. It was my first one. But while I was at it, I decided to continue. And so I'm videoing the whole, well, most of the job of converting this little Boxford lathe to CNC. So that's where we're at. Okay, so I'm going to convert this lathe to CNC and put it on the internet on YouTube. Why? Well, I intend doing this a little different from what I've seen on YouTube. I'm concerned about backlash. Now, by that, I don't mean the kind of vitriol that you get from dipsticks that take umbrage at me not self-censoring the diatribe that flows from my mouth. If you're of that bent, cut or pause this video, type into the YouTubulator TomTom Club wordy wrapping hood. That's WORDY or APPINGHOOD. Take a chill pill or pop a song. Just go with the flow. In newspeak, that would be go with the program. Now, the kind of backlash that I'm talking about is with ball screws. Kind of want some backlash. If I completely remove backlash, it means everything's tight. So that causes wear. So you have to have a little bit of backlash. But if I can keep it to a minimum and be able to calculate exactly what it is or measure it, then I can use that and put it into the software. And there's backlash compensation there. So say the x-axis has a backlash of 25 steps. It knows what direction it's traveling in. If there's a change in the G-code where it's traveling in the opposite direction, then the other motors are stopped. It'll do 25 steps in the other direction, then turn back on the other motors, and then continue with the number of steps it's supposed to do for what it calculates for the movement. So it should just automatically compensate. But if I can keep it to a minimum and consistent, the main thing is to have it consistent. The way I'm going to deal with backlash is to have two ball nuts. In the case of the x-axis, which is the cross slide, one ball nut will be fixed and the other can be spun around and locked in whatever position it needs to be locked in, so as to maintain the distance between the balls in the ball screws. The ball nut is 12 mil and it's got a pitch of 4 mil. With the z-axis that's along the ways, the two ball nuts can be fine-tuned by maintaining their distance apart or together. The ball screw there is 16 mil with a 5 mil pitch. That means that every one revolution it will move 5 millimeters exactly when it's supposed to, but they can all be sorted out. To get rid of slop and backlash again, I'm going to use truss bearings rather than ball bearings or axial ball bearings. The speed is so slow it's not going to, they're perfect for the job, two of them back to back. Now I also have to have a spindle encoder, and I don't want the hole running down the spindle. It's just over 20 millimeters, I think, just over 3/4 of an inch. It might be just over an inch, but I think it's 3/4. But I want to be able to use that for a drawbar if I need to, or for if I've got long bars that I want to pass through it. I just want it available. I don't want to interfere with it. So the spindle encoder has to work its way around that. I also want either a non-return chuck so that I can tighten it on. It's not going to, unless I loosen a few screws, it's not going to unlock. So I can run the spindle in the opposite direction if I need to, and turn the cutting tools upside down, or mount them on the back of the lathe instead of on the front. I would also like an oiling system, but that might be further down the line for oiling it. Instead, I could use a little pump or something and just use the controller, one of the relays on the controller. The controller is Centroid. I think I got that from the States. I was thinking with an oiling system, I could use a single acting cylinder spring return, a pneumatic cylinder. And if I use two non-return valves, and whenever the Z-axis homes itself, the whole saddle and cross slide moves down towards the tailstock end, that it would push on the pneumatic cylinder, which would cause it to suck in a cylinder full of oil, and then when the machine goes to work, the spring will return it and the oil will ooze out into the oil ways. So every time the machine is homed, the cylinder recharges itself with oil ready for use. It seems the simplest way of doing it, but you never know. It might be done a different way. We'll see. I have drilled and I'm tapping 8 M6 holes in the saddle casting. I've coupled the cross slide and the saddle together so as I could tram it upright in the milling machine. The position of these holes is where I choose, doesn't matter. There's going to be a fairly sturdy plate coupled onto the back of the saddle from these holes, and that will support the ball screw, ball nuts motor for the X-axis. A year or two ago I watched a video by A-Bomb79. I wonder if that's the year he was born. Kind of makes sense. He seemed totally pissed off. Gosh, it was like MacArthur's Park after someone had left the cake out in the rain. He seemed in a rant because maybe someone didn't treat his tools properly or didn't clean up after themselves. At first I thought this guy was losing it. His point was, now this is in my words, that if you live and work and share a world with other people, you should not behave like a self-serving asshole. He gave some examples. If the chuck gnarls up the shaft or the drill bit by binding while you are using it, get a file and clean it up. Do not leave it for the next person to find it damaged. And of course, return it to where it belongs. Don't just leave other people to pick up after you while you go through life defecating your self-importance as you go. If you cut a piece from a length of stock, file or sand the sharp edges from the stock that you return to the rack. Don't leave it for someone to cut themselves on it. If someone is working on a machine, particularly a manual machine, they may be concentrating. They are the computer controlling the machine. They may be retaining values and calculations in their head while their hand muscles and reactions are honed to the job in hand. A mistake now may result in screwing up many hours' work. There would be cursing and gnashing of teeth, unnecessary raised blood pressure and anxiety. Do not creep up on them unseen before making your presence known. Being creepy does them no favors. People surprised this way, even by a whisper, can leap from their trousers, and this could cause serious damage to them or the work. If you need to speak with the machinist, let them know from a distance that you are there. If you are a stranger to them, wait outside for when they are free to deal with you. Do not go poking around their workshop out of their sight and keep your hands to yourself. Do not shuffle beside them, vying for attention like a small child who needs a pee-pee, etc., etc. That's the kind of stuff he was going on with, which is all just horse sense. I guess he was asking people to be mindful and considerate of others in the work environment. I guess he was saying, do not go through life like a damn savage. Sorry, man. No offense meant. I couldn't resist it. The pun just stood out like a sore thumb. His folks must have had a wry and quirky sense of humor to call him Adam. Just as well he wasn't called Sue. I saw a video by this old Tony the other day. That's how Adam Savage's name came to mind. Speaking of rye, I had thought of calling this channel the Rye Zone. I used to be a couch potato, but I am still a tuber. I forgot that when I went searching the Googleator for something unique that had 0 results. I finished A-Bomb's video thinking, what a fantastic human being. He is the man. He's the bomb. I don't recall if he mentioned it, but I would add that if you use a shared toilet at work or at home, that you leave it as you would expect to find it. If some of the guys you live with or work with are female, lower the seat before you leave, but raise it before you pee. I find, by and large, men and women have some differences. If a man goes to the toilet to take a dump, he will check that there is enough toilet paper for his needs. If a woman sits on the throne just for a pee, she may give a little push just to see. Then she may discover there is no paper. She is not Queen Victoria, who can wash the easy bidets out of her hair. If you are male and use the last of the paper, replenish or have it replenished forthwith. Although I work alone and very seldom get finger cuts, apart from my own fingernails or an overzealous cat, cardboard or paper cuts. Since I watched that video of A-Bombs, I always deburr any stock I return to the rack and tidy any drills that get gnarled pronto. His influence has been positive and I thank him for it. The brain is still somewhat plastic, so who says you can't teach an old dog new tricks? A lot of you guys must find my accent, stroke diction, quite hard to understand. Since I started doing these videos a little while ago, I have had to listen back to my own voice. I am finding it hard to understand myself, so not only can I not read my own writing, but I can't understand a lot of my own speech. I noticed the word power I will use one syllable instead of two. I'll say par, par. Let's see if the brain is plastic enough to be able to add an extra syllable over time. Adding is harder, I would reckon. Many people, perhaps the majority in this country, do not pronounce THs. For them, there is no such word as thick, only tick. A lot of them, in some way or other, manage to sup from the state's table by way of income. Maybe they can't be bothered. Maybe they think it is quaint, or it is a sign to others that they can be bolshy, bombastic. Maybe it is a sign to others not to challenge their intellect. They may feel that they have been educated or trained beyond their intellectual capacity. The only thing that a lot of these people have ever produced in their working lives is hot air. No doubt other countries are riddled with them also. They are sucking away at the planet's resources, and all they cause is inflation. Pension funds invested into property rather than research and development only results in increasing the cost of living of the pensioners' grandchildren. Then again, if the money is lent to a different country with the assurity that it will be paid back, even if things go pear-shaped, it is taking from other people's grandchildren and the unborn. The recent financial crisis here seems to have many parallels to the potato famine just a few generations ago, when many died of starvation, while the warehouses in this country had enough food to feed the whole population 5 times over. Anyway, it can be difficult to speak distinctly while being constantly exposed to this bastardized form of Hibernia English. It seems a lot of people in the UK who have difficulty with the TH sound use an F instead, as in fic. I have often met Europeans where English would not be their first language. They may say they were in England, or they met an Englishman who told them this joke about Paddy the Englishman, Paddy the Scotsman, and Paddy the Irishman. Poor old Paddy the Welshman never seems to get a mention. Anyway, it ends up with Paddy the Englishman gets the first, Paddy the Scotsman gets the second, and Paddy the third man gets the third, followed by guffaws of laughter. To my knowledge, the word turd, which means a shit or a stool, was unknown in Ireland until recently. So this joke didn't travel. Any joke that needs explanation is it's not a joke. It's there to put people down. The British have an expression, you can't polish a turd, or it is akin to polishing a turd. A lot of non-Irish speakers do not pronounce THs either. So it is speaking with them that reminds the British of this joke. It is rare that one would tell it to an Irish person unless it is in a group where the herd mentality comes to the fore. How was that for a diatribe? It killed a lot of time while watching the video. I'm not sure about putting on music and copyright infringement. However, if there is music in the air from another YouTube video on a different computer, what the hell? The exposure to something different or reminiscent can only be a good thing. I suppose the equivalent expression here is you can't make a silk purse out of a sow's ear, a sow being a female pig. I am aware that this old lathe is the proverbial sow's ear, and I have no intention to paint or prettify it. However, in terms of functionality, I will see how far I can take it. I would like to have the CNC controls unpluggable, where it will work like an electronic lead screw for quick and simple jobs without the PC and software having to boot up. This is the future, dim and misty, but only if I need to. I still have another lathe after all. So the only reasoning to progress that far is for the learning curve. If you were walking down the street sometime and you meet some hollow ancient eyes, please don't just pass them by and stare as if you didn't care. Say hello in there. Hello. It's time to wind up this video, part 1, and commit it to the ether. There is probably a lot I should or shouldn't have said. However, it is what it is. Your comments are welcome. You are the chief motivator as to how quick or how much effort I put into the mammoth task of producing the next episode. This may take a while, but if you are curious, you know how to find out when it is posted. Negative feedback may also be good, otherwise I may crash and burn. Take care, be nice, good, and the best your circumstances will allow. Many thanks for watching. Ciao.